Everyone, it's Shayna, and I am so excited to jump into episode 11 of the Kick-Ass Leadership Series with Dr. Jennifer Edwards. And while I'm adding her, what we're going to be talking about today is still related to goal setting for 2025. And what we're really excited to kind of get into is what happens when we start to think about our goals and then get stopped by how we're going to accomplish certain things. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Shayna. How are you?
Welcome. I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm fantastic.
Good. So I was just sharing that we are still talking about our goals and how we set goals for 2025, and how one of the things that you and I were just talking about is how it's so easy to get stuck with how we accomplish goals. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts. I know we were just sharing a little bit offline, but why don't you kick it off today?
Yeah, so it's so interesting because our minds, when we set out to accomplish something or achieve some sort of stature or a new job or something that we want to create in our lives, the first thing that we think about is, well, I don't know how to do that. What do I do? Like, how do I? And then we start focusing on that. Now, when there is something big, like I want to become a leader or I want to open my own business, the thing that we want is so many steps removed that focusing on the how to get there, it literally is enough to just stop us right in our tracks.
Absolutely. And I think about, I think very personally about like when I was going to start my business, I've been thinking about it for years, but the idea of becoming a business owner from an employee was like such a far leap for me that I couldn't even envision how. And because it just seemed too hard, I just didn't for so many
Mhm.
years.
Yeah, yeah, and that's so common. But the reality is that it is going to be an extremely rare situation. In fact, I would maybe venture to guess never that anybody sets out to create anything big and they know every single step along the way that they're going to take. They
Mhm.
just don't. Even people who have been massively successful,
Absolutely.
like, I'm sure Bill Gates didn't know every single step along the way. He basically started, but the key is in order to just start and take the first couple of steps that are in front of you, the thing that needs to shift first is who you are, how you see yourself, so that you can become the type of person who creates whatever it is you're out to create. Then from there, the what to do just naturally follows.
Absolutely. And I heard somebody once say, you don't focus, and I say this to clients actually, you don't focus on the how, you focus on
Hmm.
what, and you focus on the who. The how will follow, to your point,
Yeah,
right? And so I think it is figuring out like, who do I need to be? And not only who do I need to be, but who can I become that's authentic to myself, the best version of myself?
yes.
And what is it that I want? And when you combine those two things and you start to step into that, which we'll talk about in a second, the how piece will come after.
Exactly. Because it all comes down to energy,
Mhm.
right? And we talk about energy a lot inside of energy leadership, which is our coaching framework from IPEC. And when we shift our energy, some people might call it a way of being or a state of being. There's many different words for it, but it's basically who you are, how you're showing up. When that is of consistent with somebody who is creating whatever you want to create, you start to see things differently. You start to have different thoughts. You have different feelings. Because when you have a thought of, I'll figure it out as I go, you have a feeling of excitement and curiosity.
Mhm.
Well, the actions that follow that are very different than when you have a thought of, this is too hard, I don't know how, I'm never going to figure it out. And then you have a feeling of, an imposter or defeat or unworthiness, the actions that follow are probably not going to get you where you need to go. So the key is not necessarily focusing on how and all the steps and mapping it out, but saying, who do I need to be to create this?
Absolutely.
What does that look like? And ask them, what does that feel
Mhm.
like?
Yeah, yeah, and I think about, let me live, I'm going to use an example. So let's say you're somebody who is about to take on maybe a much bigger team than you're used to, and you feel like, oh, who am I to lead all these people? You might ask yourself something like, well, somebody who does that now, what are the things they have to be thinking? What are the things they have to be doing? And how can I start, like, in just a teeny tiny way, acting as if I am somebody who leads a team of large people? And it might be something very, very simple that you start with, just like, well, I was asked to do this. I was put in this position. So I must be, there must be something there to it. And starting with just believing that might be the first
Hmm.
little baby step. And so it's like, okay, day one, I'm going to go in and I'm going to believe like I'm somebody who's meant to lead this team, even though I'm still trying to believe it myself. I'm going to go
Exactly.
with somebody who does this, does believe it. Somebody who's doing this every day isn't even thinking about it anymore. So how can I act as if I am somebody who leads large teams without any kinds of issues?
Right. And then all of a sudden things start to shift in feelings and behavior. And now all of a sudden the person who might have been very passive at the team meeting comes and contributes.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're coming with notes written down and they're raising their hand and they're offering opinions, whereas before perhaps they had the perception of nobody really cares. Nobody wants to hear who am I, right? But when you shift into the I'm a leader now, and here's the leader I'm aspiring to be at some point in the future, then sitting back and not participating is not consistent with
That's,
that. But the person did not have to sit down and think, how do I become a leader? I know I participate more at
mm-hmm.
meetings. That's not how it works. You shift who you are first, and then you just do what naturally flows from that.
That's right. And I think it's important to note, I don't think either of us are saying you just like snap your fingers and believe this thing, poof, you become this new person. It happens gradually over time, but it does start with some of these little itty bitty shifts that you can get your arms around that feel small, and they're still going to feel hard because you are asking yourself to step into a different version of yourself. But how can you do it in little tiny ways along the way where you start to look back and say over time, wow, look at the shift that I made. And if I go back to the first example I used, I didn't think I could be a business owner. That
Mhm.
seemed crazy. But now looking back, I just took itty bitty, teeny tiny little steps. And now, almost 3 years later, like this is what I do and it's who I am. But it wasn't that I just poof snapped my fingers and had a successful business, right? It had to happen over time in little dribs and drabs, and stepping into like, okay, if somebody who's doing this, like, what are some steps they're taking? Well, they're probably doing this and that. Okay, let me try one of those that feels like I can accomplish it today. Right?
Right.
It's little
Well,
things.
even us here right now doing this Instagram Live. 3 years ago, we wouldn't be doing this, right? But this is just naturally how we have morphed as we've developed into our businesses, which 3 years ago perhaps wasn't like that. The other thing, real quick before we end, is also to realize that it is a golden opportunity. Because when a person says, again, we'll just use that same example, I want to be a higher management leader, and they start to want to shift into that again, there's no magic wand, no snap of the fingers, but what is stopping them? What fears come up? What stories about why so and so can do it but I can't? Because that is where the growth will come. That is where you have an opportunity to tweak away all of the insecurities, the stories, the lack of confidence. We call them energy blocks. And there's a whole series on our YouTube podcast channel about the energy blocks. But to tweak those out of the way little by little so that when the opportunity arises, the person can actually step into that. So, yes, it's scary. Yes, you don't see how. And yes, you feel like an imposter. But that's the point. That's a good thing.
That's right. That's right. And I heard somebody once say, if you believe it's possible, if you believe people can achieve it, and if you believe you're somebody who best case scenario could achieve it, then you can achieve it.
100%.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay.
What the mind can achieve, what the mind can conceive, the mind can achieve.
Yes.
It's a very famous quote.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. Well,
So
fun. I know we've got a lot more exciting 2025 goal setting conversations up ahead of us for our viewers. Thank you all for joining us, those of you who are here and who are watching afterwards, and wishing you a great rest of your week. Thanks so much, Jen.
thank you and happy holidays,
Happy
everybody.
holidays.